The rain came down with a kind of mercilessness that felt almost personal, as if the whole sky had chosen that night to punish him. Matthew stumbled out of his old sedan, its wipers still squeaking in protest, as he slammed the door and ran toward the little restaurant glowing with warm lights. His clothes clung to his skin, heavy and cold, and water dripped from his hair onto the floor as he stepped inside. He paused at the entrance, chest heaving, breath shaky. This wasn't how he had imagined tonight. This wasn't how a man was supposed to show up for his first date in years. But for a single father who had spent the last decade rebuilding himself from the ruins, nothing ever came easy. He looked around, searching for the woman he was supposed to meet, but it was the soft, almost trembled whisper behind him that froze him still. "I know you." Before we go deeper, if you believe in kindness, in healing, and in second chances, take a moment to like, comment, share, and subscribe. It truly helps the channel and keeps stories like this alive. Matthew turned, his heart pounding with a mix of confusion and dread, wondering who could possibly recognize him after so many years of living in the shadows. He found himself staring at a woman with calm, thoughtful eyes and a gentle smile, one that seemed to carry 1,000 untold memories. Her name was Claire, and she was the blind date he had reluctantly agreed to meet after his co-workers insisted he deserved a night out. But as he stood there, water dripping onto the polished wooden floor, he couldn't shake the strange familiarity that flickered across her face. There was something in her expression that suggested she knew more about him than she should, something hidden beneath the polite kindness she offered when she reached for a napkin to help him dry off. He felt embarrassed, painfully aware of his drenched state, and even more painfully aware of how exhausted he looked. His life had been a storm long before the rain outside. Raising his 7-year-old daughter Lily alone, working long shifts at a local hardware store, taking night courses so he could one day earn a better income, fighting off the quiet dread of never being enough. It all weighed on him. Tonight he had hoped could be a small step toward reclaiming a part of himself he had buried under responsibilities and heartbreak. But instead he felt exposed, awkward, like a man pretending to belong in a world that had long since moved on without him. They found a table, and although he apologized repeatedly for his appearance, Claire simply listened with an expression that made him feel strangely safe. There was something soft in her presence, something warm enough to cut through the lingering chill of the rain. She asked about his daughter, and he spoke about Lily with the kind of pride that lit up his tired eyes. He described her drawings, her stubbornness, the way she climbed into his lap after long days as if she sensed when his spirit was cracking. Claire listened closely, as if she were memorizing every detail. As the evening unfolded, Matthew felt a slow unraveling inside him, a loosening of the tight knots he had held for years. Yet beneath this unexpected comfort, there remained the persistent tug of curiosity. Why had she whispered that? How did she know him? It wasn't until after dinner, when the rain finally softened to a gentle drizzle and they stepped outside into the cool night air, that she finally revealed the truth. She hesitated, almost afraid to disturb the fragile connection forming between them, then told him that she had once seen him at the hospital 7 years earlier, not as a patient, but as a man pacing the corridor in grief and fear. Back then, when Lily had been born prematurely, tiny and fighting to breathe in the NICU, Matthew had slept in chairs, cried in hallways, and whispered promises to his daughter through the glass walls of her incubator. Claire had been there too, visiting her mother in the same hospital ward. She remembered seeing him stand by that incubator night after night, holding a worn blanket and praying silently. She remembered the look of determination on his face as he promised his newborn that he would be both mother and father, protector and provider. He stared at her, his breath catching. He had never known anyone was watching. That version of him had been raw and broken, a man who'd lost the woman he loved during childbirth and had been thrust into fatherhood with trembling hands and a shattered heart. He had carried that grief alone, bearing it beneath years of relentless effort to give Lily a life filled with love and safety. And yet here stood someone who had witnessed the most vulnerable moment of his entire existence. As he absorbed her words, something inside him shifted. It wasn't embarrassment or fear. It was something gentler, something like being seen for the first time in years. Claire said she had never forgotten him. She had never forgotten the look in his eyes that night, a look she described as equal parts heartbreak and devotion. She admitted that when she saw his name on the blind date profile her friend had sent, it lingered in her heart, and she hoped, quietly, secretly, that it was the same man. The revelation settled between them like a quiet miracle. Matthew felt the weight of all the years pressing against him, the lonely nights, the endless sacrifices, and for the first time, he wasn't ashamed of them. Somehow knowing that someone had seen his pain and still chosen to be there with him now made him feel worthy in a way he hadn't felt in a very long time. They continued talking as they walked, steps slow, their voices blending with the hum of the city. She told him about her work as a special education teacher, her love of gardening, her own quiet battles with loneliness after losing her parents. The world around them seemed to fade as they shared stories of heartbreak and healing. Two people who had spent years holding themselves together, finally finding a place to set their burdens down. Over the next weeks, something soft and steady grew between them. She met Lily, who shyly hid behind Matthew at first, but eventually reached for Claire's hand during a visit to the park. They read stories together, built pillow forts, and cooked meals where Lily insisted on adding far too much cheese. Claire seemed to move into their lives like sunlight seeping through curtains, gentle, patient, and warming everything she touched. Matthew found himself laughing more, sleeping deeper, breathing easier. The world didn't feel so heavy anymore. Claire encouraged him during his night classes, surprising him with notebooks and coffee, cheering him on as he pushed through exhaustion. And he, in turn, learned how to open his heart again, slowly, carefully, letting love thread itself back into the places he had sealed off. But love, even gentle love, isn't without fear. One evening after Lily had fallen asleep, Matthew confessed his biggest worry, that he would never be enough for Claire, that his past, his struggles, his failures would someday push her away. Claire took his hands and told him that she didn't want perfection. She wanted truth. She wanted the man who stood in that hospital years ago and refused to abandon hope. She wanted the father who carried his daughter through storms with a tired smile. She wanted him exactly as he was. Those words lingered in his chest for days, echoing softly in a place he once thought was too scarred to heal. Months passed, and the seasons shifted. Christmas lights glowed in windows, and the world became wrapped in warmth despite the cold. Matthew, Lily, and Claire found themselves building new traditions, baking cookies, decorating a small apartment tree, singing off-key carols that made Lily giggle uncontrollably. The small family that Matthew had once thought he would never have again seemed to unfold naturally, beautifully, as if it had been waiting for him all along. Then one snowy evening, nearly a year after that rainy blind date, Matthew took Claire to the same little restaurant where everything began. He wasn't drenched this time. He wasn't shaking from exhaustion or fear. He stood tall, dressed neatly, with Lily holding a tiny handmade sign that read, "Will you be my mommy?" As Claire knelt with tears in her eyes, Matthew asked her to join their family forever. She said yes with a trembling smile, a smile that held the same warmth she carried on that rainy night when she whispered she knew him. Their life didn't become perfect overnight. There were still struggles, bills, tantrums, worries, and long days. But there was also love, steady, resilient, grounding. There was laughter in their home, soft music on weekends, quiet evenings with warm blankets and shared dreams. Matthew finally felt like he had stepped out of the storm, and he knew that sometimes the people who find us when we are at our lowest are the ones who stay with us when we rise. If this story touched your heart, please like, comment, share, and subscribe. Your support helps us continue bringing meaningful stories to the channel. Before we end, tell us in the comments, do you believe love can find you even in your darkest moments?